Well, welcome to the CSAE podcast series called Best Minds in Associations. And we're really honored today, folks, to have Nathan Cooper with us. Nathan, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Bob.
Let me tell you a little bit about Nathan. Nathan is the executive director of the Sheet Metal and Air Conditioning Contractors National Association Colorado chapter. That's a mouthful. But let me tell you a little bit about Nathan. He began with the organization as the executive director in January of 2018. Leads the association's efforts in labor relations, education, advocacy, and management of multi-employer health, retirement, and training benefit funds. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Nathan arrived in Colorado after serving the Iowa Wholesale Beer Distributors Association in the same capacity in 2015. He graduated from University of Iowa, began his career in the Iowa Senate before spending 6 years with the Sheet Metal Contractors of Iowa. He's a member of the Arvada Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors and serves on the Chamber's Construction and Trades Industry Action Committee, and also participated in Colorado Work Act Grant Review Committee. Nathan and his wife Laura enjoy traveling in Colorado and around the world and is involved at the Faith Lutheran Church with their youth group. So Nathan, awesome resume and bio. So we look forward to chat a little bit. So Nathan, when we were connecting earlier, you were telling me a little bit about how you got into the industry, and it started with a pickup basketball game with legislators and staff in Iowa. Tell our audience a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And again, I appreciate you having me. And thinking about that list of accomplishments you just rattled off, what's really incredible about that is truly nothing in that order would have happened without that pickup basketball game. Back in 2008, I was a journalism a near grad at the University of Iowa, and I picked up an opportunity to intern at the Iowa Senate. And it just so happened that the state senator I worked for had a standing pickup basketball game with a couple of other legislators and staff and lobbyists at the Capitol. And so Merrill Middle School, February of 2009, with a few good friends and a few good legislators and staff was really where I started making connections in the association industry. And I owe a lot of credit to my mentor at the Sheet Metal Contractors Association of Iowa, Dennis Hogan, who organized the game on a weekly basis there in Des Moines. And after the session ended, Dennis reached out and asked if I would be interested in joining the association for $15 an hour and the best health insurance package that $2,000 a year could buy.
Sounds about right. Well, it's funny how connecting that way, I think my best connections with a lot of electeds have been on the golf course or walking or events. So that's awesome. And did you let up on them or did you let them have it?
No, I mean, some of them are pretty feisty.
Yeah, I'm sure.
The most challenging were the wrestlers. Coming from Iowa, there are a lot of non-basketball players.
Okay.
So it turned more into a rugby game than a basketball game sometimes.
It can get physical. Well, Nathan, tell us a little bit about the organization that you're working with now.
Yeah, so SMACNA Colorado is an organization of HVAC and sheet metal contractors. HVAC primarily being the fabrication and installation of ductwork and units and indoor air quality. We have other pieces of our work that include architectural and ornamental sheet metal. And so the contractors that we represent, and there's about 60 of them across the state, really have a range of expertises in metal fabrication and installation. And, in a lot of ways, we are a garden variety association. We have educational opportunities for, executives and managers and project managers. We do our share of advocacy in Denver and at the state level. Of course, we have a federal program through our national organization as well, and provide that networking and research opportunities and learning opportunities for all members. But what is also interesting about our association is we provide technical standards for the industry. So we are looked to as a resource for architects and engineers in the design community for architectural sort of installations as well as HVAC standards. So you'll find a lot of the standards that our engineering department creates and writes go into building codes that really impact, everybody in a built environment.
It's super critical. Okay, so you were telling me, and this is of personal interest, that your organization's done some really great work in the area of apprenticeship programs. Tell our audience a little bit about that.
Yeah, certainly. We have here in Colorado a multi-employer statewide joint apprenticeship training committee. And at the moment, we train about 190 sheet metal apprentices from one of our three facilities. We have one, our biggest one here in Denver, as well as Colorado Springs and Grand Junction. And that is a critical piece to our workforce development. Just about everybody that comes into the industry on a fabrication or construction installation crew starts with an apprenticeship program, which is a 4-year earn while you learn program with annual wage progressions each year. And right now, someone who completes the apprenticeship program, and you don't need much to get in, you need a GED or a high school diploma. And it's helpful to have a little bit of work experience. And, we provide that to you at the entry level. So you come into our program with little to no experience, a GED or a bachelor, a GED or a diploma. And we've had folks that come to us with bachelor's and master's and associate's degrees, and we're happy to, train those folks as well. But after that 4 years, you can expect to make about $36 an hour,
And
tax wage plus your benefits in our industry.
so Nathan, tell us, I'm assuming, and I'd like you to talk about this, but I'm assuming your members see this apprenticeship program as a feeder to an extent, right? Where my organization, that my membership-based organization I'm paying dues to, is really doing a tangible service for me that helps my workforce. Is that an accurate assessment?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we could do what we do without our apprenticeship program. And, as far as the association goes, it really is our crown jewel. And what's unique about our industry, and I think you can say this for other construction industries as well, especially specialty construction organizations, but a lot of the folks in management and executive and ownership level positions started their career with an apprenticeship.
Sure.
So, my board certainly understands the importance of learning the trade from the bottom up. And it is really a critical piece of what we do as an organization.
So it must be rewarding for you and your organization to have a successful program that helps your members. I guess that's my point.
Yeah, it certainly is. And, I find it personally rewarding, the connections that I make to these future leaders in our industry. You have people that come into our program that didn't think they had any other options and weren't sure if they were just going to go job to job up and down the dial for their
Sure.
entire working life. And now they've had an opportunity to have a career, to find a pathway into project management, into becoming a foreman,
Sure.
becoming a CAD operator, or doing any number of the other things that are involved in running an apprenticeship program, whether it's a training coordinator or an instructor, all the way up to executive and ownership level positions.
Yeah, it's thank God for these apprenticeship programs that have grown so much over the last 15, 20 years. Because I have 4 grown kids, and they all went to college, but 2 of them just shouldn't have. And one of them just went through it, and he works in Texas for a company that refurbishes large scales that weigh trucks and ships and things like that. And I just think if our society just kind of had, at least I'm a baby boomer, it was go to college, right? You are going to go to college. And thank God for apprentice programs like yours that let people know that entering a trade like this is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity and a wonderful career. So do you know off the top of your head, Nathan, and we'll move on because I get a little obsessed with this, but what would you say the average age is of the person that's in your apprentice programs?
No, that's a great question, and I love to geek out on this stuff as well. Our average apprentice age is about 27 and a half.
Okay.
And that would assume, they're about 2 years into their program of study at that point. So, your average apprentice is coming to us at probably age 24, 25, 26. And we've got apprentices who have finished high school and they're going to be joining up with us coming up here in June. And we've
Nice.
also got apprentices that are in their 50s that see a 5 or a 10-year runway yet in their working career, and they still want to be part of something. So we're a very inclusive organization. We're just about to 8% women in our trade, at
Okay.
least apprenticeship level. And down in our Colorado Springs facility, we're north of 40% veteran. So
Okay.
we do our best in outreach and being accessible to the community.
And there's probably a lot of association execs and people listening right now that maybe this is going to trigger something, because I got to believe there's a lot of organizations, not just in the country, but in Colorado, that likely could develop some type of an apprentice program for their members. So hopefully, maybe if you're willing, if people can reach out to you and learn more about how you did it. All right, let's shift gears a little bit. You had also talked about your multi-employer health plan, which obviously healthcare and benefits and things like that. But you also, let's talk about that. And then you also, we chatted a little bit about providing kind of a collective bargaining services with labor on certain employee benefits. So how does all that work with your organization? And is that something that you think other associations could also consider doing?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. It's kind of an interesting niche because in SMACNA, I represent contractors who, for the most part, are signatory to a collective bargaining agreement.
Okay.
And one of the services that the association provides members is because of the way the labor management laws are drawn up in this country, we have what are called Taft-Hartley funds. And the pension fund and the multi-employer health fund are part of that Taft-Hartley group, which requires equal representation of labor and management on those committees. And so when we go to bargain on behalf of our members with the union, the association negotiates that agreement, and as part of that agreement, both the health fund and the pension fund are jointly administered by a group of labor and management trustees, and I sit as a trustee on both of those funds.
Okay.
So it's a way to provide employee benefits, but it is a joint fund with our local union, and we look at our labor partners just as that, as partners. And so I will give a lot of credit to the leadership. I think we've done some creative things with both of those plans that have, I think, given us a competitive advantage in the marketplace in attracting talent to our apprenticeship programs without hamstringing the employers in the association with the sort of legacy burdens that you may have heard about other places.
Okay. And if I'm not a member of your organization, that's an awfully good reason for me to be a member of your organization, right? I mean, your members got to see it that way.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, to them, nothing is more critical than having an able, ready, and qualified workforce. And if your labor management relationship is not in a good place, it's really hard to count on that basic tenet. And so, members of our organization join because they want involvement and input on those benefit plans, as well as
Sure.
collective bargaining, and the other labor type services that we offer them.
Okay. So with these podcasts, Nathan, the coronavirus size comes up, and a lot of our guests have talked about how they shifted gears and how things are going to look differently. Um, with your members, and I know that their services were considered essential services, but how did the virus affect either your relationship with your organization and your members, or their business?
Yeah, I mean, if anything, I think the relationship between the members and the organization was strengthened. I mean, if you go back a year, there was a time where we didn't know if construction services were going to be deemed essential. And, the governor and local public health agencies were publishing, these health orders, it felt like on an hourly basis. And one of the things that the association did, kind of using my journalism background, was reporting out what is going on and what are certain sources saying. And I got, a ton of positive feedback about how much that was helpful because, when you're trying to plan out your day or your week, knowing if a certain county is going to allow, construction workers to go to work is a pretty big deal.
Sure is.
So at first it was just reporting out, who, what, when, where, and how. And, from there we kind of kicked it up a notch. Our national association was on the spot with a study through our research arm that aimed to detail the impact on productivity of the COVID pandemic. And so, certainly out in the field where now you have elevators that are one way and you can only have one or two people in a stairwell at a time, or just a couple of people on a floor, and you have to do the temperature checks. That all affects productivity. And in a business where, you're estimating and paying by the hour, those are really critical impacts. And so we
Sure.
found by about late June that was a 7 to 10% productivity impact in the field. But what we found in the shop is in some cases, it actually improved productivity because you didn't have people, walking around the shop, extended breaks, just more time
Sure.
chatting. And so, the association, I think, was really good at relaying back real world data to the membership.
Okay. And Nathan, I can, for our audience, we're doing this via Zoom, so I can see Nathan, I can see you're in your office. How is, as the executive director, and I'm assuming you have some staff, I'm not sure how many, but how's that going? How has your staff done through all this? And are you all coming back to the office? Did you never leave the office? How's all that going?
Yeah, combo platter. I've got typically two staff. We're in between on one of the staff, so it's a smaller group. Um, you know, I think as far as this goes, most of the workforce didn't have the luxury of being in the office and working remote, and so we certainly didn't require anyone to come into the office. But I think there is something that is almost a show of support for the rest of the industry, as long as we're certainly not putting anyone else at risk. So, we probably worked from the office a little bit more than most did, but, we also had a mostly empty building to work from. So that was
Sure.
also a nice benefit as well.
Yeah, it's we had our first in-person CSAE event yesterday. We did a little picnic in Centennial. We had about 25 members, and it felt good to be back and kind of active with everybody. So any my final question, I guess, for Nathan, any last thoughts that you want to share with me? I know we talked a little bit about the role that your members play in our world. Something that maybe a lot of us don't really, maybe we take it for granted. I work for the water industry, and until I went to work for them, I didn't realize how lucky we are that we can just walk up to a faucet or a hose and have water. But any final thoughts that we had talked a little bit about it that you'd like to share with our group today?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. And when the pandemic hit, I saw contractors moving in ways that really touched me and that I really didn't think about. So, for example, on the job sites, we were fortunate that most job sites were not shut down for extended periods of time. But if you recall, there were times where hand sanitizer was impossible to get your hands on. There were,
Right.
just wipes and things to make sure that the work sites are staying sanitary. And one of my members down in Colorado Springs said, "Oh, we can't find hand sanitizer, but we sure do have a heck of a lot of soap, and we can fabricate something that you can dispense soap out." And so within a day or two, they had kind of fabricated a prototype for a foot controlled water station that you could have a little, squirt bottle of soap and allow the workers on the job sites to, clean up. And
Sure.
it was just one of the many ways that our members innovated during the pandemic. And the other thing is, more practical for the healthcare industry and just Colorado in general. But when they started popping up these COVID wings, either in hospitals or down at the convention center, for example, our contractors, that's what they do. It's indoor air quality. It's negative pressure in ICU rooms. And so, the first couple of weeks in April, we had members working 6 or 7, 10 or 12-hour days to reverse pressure in some of those hospital rooms and stand up the temporary units in Loveland and Pueblo and Denver. And so it was, really touching to see them go to work in ways that were super critical for the health and safety of our population. And it just, puts into perspective that, yeah, we can do a lot of fun things, and, we can be there as an association, but when our contractors go to work, it's really impressive and really critical work.
Well, good for them and good for you and your organization, because you're right. There's a lot of silver linings that have come out of this that I think, particularly for membership-based organizations, it seems like everybody I've spoken to has said these are the really positives that came out, and many of them have been the connectivity and the relationship with their members. And obviously your members stepped up beyond belief. So, well, Nathan Cooper, thank you for joining us today. Nathan is the Executive Director of the Sheet Metal and Air Conditioning Contractors National Association, Colorado chapter. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah. And listen, a couple reminders. These podcasts can be found at the CSAE website, csae.org. And another one of my shameless plugs for the CSAE Summer Conference. We're going to be back in person up at the Grand Hyatt in Vail, June 30th through July 2nd. We hope that you can find a way to either come up or send some of your staff up. It's going to be a phenomenal program. So with that, I'm going to sign off, and thank you for listening to the CSAE podcast series, Best Minds in Association.